The space station called Haven's Rest floated in the darkness between three star systems. It was the biggest structure Jake Morrison had ever seen in his 28 years of life. The station had 12 docking bays and each one held ships from different alien species. Today was special because it marked the first time in history that so many different races had come together to talk about peace. Jake worked as an engineer on the station. His job was simple but important. He fixed broken things and made sure all the systems worked properly. He carried his tool bag everywhere and knew every hallway and room in the massive structure. Most diplomats barely noticed him as he went about his daily work. The observation deck was Jake's favorite place on the station. It had huge windows that looked out into space. Stars sparkled like diamonds against the black sky, and colorful nebulas painted clouds of light in the distance. Jake often came here during his breaks to watch the ships come and go. On this particular day, Jake was checking the environmental controls near the observation deck when he noticed someone sitting alone in the far corner. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen before. Her skin was pale and smooth like moonlight, and her hair was long and silver. She wore a flowing dress that seemed to shimmer with its own light. Her ears were pointed and delicate. Jake realized she must be one of the elven people he had heard about, but never met. What struck Jake most were her eyes. They were completely white with no color at all. She stared straight ahead, but Jake could tell she was not seeing anything. The woman was blind. She sat perfectly still with her hands folded in her lap. Her face showed no emotion at all. Jake had been working on the station for 6 months and he had never seen anyone sit so alone. Usually the observation deck was full of diplomats and visitors looking at the stars and talking excitedly about the peace negotiations. But this woman sat by herself as if she was invisible to everyone else. Jake finished his work on the environmental panel, but he found himself looking back at the lonely figure. Something about her stillness bothered him. He had always been the kind of person who noticed when others seemed sad or left out. His mother had raised him to be kind to people who were different or struggling. After thinking for a moment, Jake walked over to where the woman was sitting. He chose a chair about 10 feet away from her so he would not startle her or make her uncomfortable. The woman's head turned slightly toward him when she heard his footsteps, but she did not speak. Jake looked out at the stars and began talking in a quiet voice. He described what he could see through the windows. He told her about a bright blue star that twinkled in the distance and a red planet that slowly moved across their view. He mentioned the way the nebula changed colors from purple to pink to gold. The woman listened but did not respond. Jake was not discouraged. He continued talking about the different ships that were docked at the station. He described the sleek, silver vessel from the Crystalline Collective and the organic-looking craft from the plant-based species. He talked about how the human ships looked rough and practical compared to the elegant alien designs. After about 20 minutes, Jake finished his descriptions and prepared to leave. As he stood up, the woman spoke for the first time. Her voice was soft and musical with an accent Jake had never heard before. "Why do you speak to me, human?" she asked without looking in his direction. Jake sat back down and thought about her question. "You looked lonely," he said simply. "Everyone deserves to know about the beautiful things around them." The woman was quiet for a long moment. "I am Princess Lyra Lee, Starweaver of the Etherian Elves," she said finally. "I am cursed with blindness, and my people consider me untouchable. You should not waste your time with one such as me." Jake frowned at her words. "I don't think blindness makes anyone cursed," he said. "My name is Jake Morrison and I work here on the station. I think everyone deserves friendship." Princess Lyra Lee turned her head toward Jake for the first time. Her blind eyes seemed to look right through him. "You are either very brave or very foolish, human Jake Morrison," she said. "No one approaches me by choice." Jake smiled even though she could not see it. "Maybe I'm both," he said. "But I'd like to come back tomorrow and tell you about more things if that's okay with you." For the first time since Jake had seen her, a small expression crossed Princess Lyra Lee's face. It might have been surprise or maybe something close to hope. "You may do as you wish," she said quietly. Jake stood up and gathered his tools. "I'll see you tomorrow then, Princess," he said. As he walked away, he heard her whisper something in her own language that sounded almost like a prayer. The next day, Jake returned to the observation deck after finishing his morning repairs. Princess Lyrelei was sitting in the same spot wearing a different dress but with the same lonely expression. Jake sat in the same chair as before and began describing the view again. This time he noticed that other people in the observation deck were staring at them. A group of tall elves with golden hair and perfect features watched from across the room. They whispered among themselves and pointed at Jake and the princess. Their expressions showed disapproval and concern. Jake ignored them and continued talking to Princess Lyrelei about the stars. He had spent time the night before learning about the different constellations visible from the station, so he would have more interesting things to share with her. Captain Lisa Martinez entered the observation deck during Jake's description of a distant galaxy. She was Jake's superior officer and the commander of the human delegation. Jake expected her to order him back to work, but instead she watched quietly from the doorway. Princess Lyrelei seemed more relaxed during their second meeting. She asked Jake questions about his descriptions and even smiled once when he told her about a small asteroid that looked like it was dancing between two moons. When Jake finished his break and prepared to leave, Princess Lyrelei spoke again. "Thank you, Jake Morrison," she said. "I have not heard such descriptions of beauty in many years." Jake felt happy that he had brightened her day even a little bit. "I'll be back tomorrow, Princess," he promised. As Jake walked past Captain Martinez, she stepped beside him. "That's quite an unusual friendship you're developing there, engineer," she said quietly. Jake looked back at Princess Lyrelei, who was still sitting alone. "She just needed someone to talk to," he said. Captain Martinez nodded thoughtfully. "Just be careful, Jake. There are politics here that you might not understand." Jake understood that there might be complications, but he also knew that leaving Princess Lyrelei alone was not the right thing to do. He had made a promise to return, and he intended to keep it. Jake kept his promise and returned to the observation deck every day during his break time. Each day, Princess Lyrelei was sitting in the same chair waiting for him. She never said she was waiting, but Jake could tell, because she seemed less tense when he arrived. On his third visit, Jake brought something special with him. In his tool bag, he carried a small piece of metal from Earth. It was copper that had been polished until it was perfectly smooth on one side, but left rough and textured on the other. Jake had been saving it as a reminder of home, but he thought Princess Lyrelei might enjoy feeling the different textures. Jake sat down and began his usual description of the stars. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out the copper piece. "Princess, I brought something for you today if you would like to feel it," he said. Princess Lyrelei turned toward him with surprise. "You brought me a gift?" she asked. Jake held out the metal piece. "It's from my home planet Earth. It shows how the same material can feel completely different depending on how it's treated." Princess Lyrelei carefully took the copper and ran her fingers over both sides. Her face showed wonder as she felt the smooth surface and then the rough texture. "This is amazing," she said softly. "On the smooth side, I can almost see my reflection with my fingers. The rough side tells a story of how it was shaped." Jake was pleased that she enjoyed the simple gift. Over the following days, he brought other small items that engaged her senses. He brought a recording device that played the sound of ocean waves from Earth. Princess Lyrelei listened with her eyes closed and asked many questions about what oceans were like. Another day, Jake brought a small container of earth honey. "This might taste strange to you," he warned as he offered her a tiny sample on a clean spoon. "But humans have enjoyed this food for thousands of years." Princess Lyrelei tasted the honey carefully. Her expression changed to one of delight. "It tastes like sunshine, feels warm," she said. "How do your people make such sweetness?" Jake explained. About bees and flowers and how honey was made naturally. Princess Lyrelei listened with fascination. "Your world sounds full of small wonders," she said. As the days passed, Princess Lyrelei began sharing more about herself. She told Jake about the elven homeworld with its crystal cities and floating gardens. She described the music her people made that could actually change the colors of their buildings. Jake listened with the same attention she gave to his descriptions. One day Princess Lyrelay mentioned that she loved ancient elven poetry. The old poems tell stories of heroes and magical quests, she said sadly. But I have not heard them in many years. My people believe that sharing such things with a cursed one brings bad fortune. That night, Jake stayed up late in his quarters, using the station's language database. He found translations of several famous elven poems and worked hard to learn how to pronounce the words in her language. The elven tongue was musical and flowing, but very difficult for human vocal cords to manage. The next day, Jake surprised Princess Lyrelay by reciting one of the ancient poems in her own language. His pronunciation was terrible, and he stumbled over many of the words, but he made it through the entire piece. When Jake finished, Princess Lyrelay was crying. Tears ran down her pale cheeks as she smiled for the first time since Jake had known her. "That was beautiful," she whispered. "You spoke the words of Sylvanus the Great, though your accent makes him sound like he has a mouthful of pebbles." Jake laughed at her description. "I'll keep practicing," he promised. Princess Lyrelay wiped her tears away. "No one has recited the old poems to me since I was a child," she said. "You have given me a great gift, Jake Morrison." Their friendship was beginning to attract more attention from the other diplomats. Ambassador Kira Stone, who led the human negotiation team, made a point of walking through the observation deck during one of Jake's visits. She watched quietly as Jake and Princess Lyrelay shared stories and laughter. Later that day, Ambassador Stone found Jake in the engineering section. "Engineer Morrison, I've been watching your interactions with the Elven Princess," she said. Jake worried that he was about to be ordered to stop visiting Princess Lyrelay. "I hope I haven't caused any problems, Ambassador," he said. Ambassador Stone smiled. "Actually, quite the opposite. I've received reports that Princess Lyrelay has shown more emotion and engagement in the past week than she has during her entire stay here. The Elven delegation is concerned, but I think what you're doing might be diplomatically significant." Jake was confused. "I'm just being friendly," he said. "Sometimes that's exactly what diplomacy needs," Ambassador Stone replied. "Keep doing what you're doing, but be aware that you may be watched more closely now." The warning proved accurate. The next day, when Jake arrived at the observation deck, he noticed more Elven officials present than usual. They stood at the far end of the room and observed his interaction with Princess Lyrelay. Their expressions showed clear disapproval. Princess Lyrelay sensed the tension as well. "They are watching us," she said quietly to Jake. "Does that bother you?" Jake asked. Princess Lyrelay considered the question. "For the first time in my life, I do not care what they think," she said. "You have shown me that there are people who see value in me despite my blindness. That is worth more than their approval." Jake felt proud of her courage. He continued his usual routine of describing the view and sharing small gifts and stories. Princess Lyrelay responded with more openness than ever before. She laughed at Jake's jokes and shared her own stories about Elven culture. When Ambassador Theron Goldleaf approached their seating area, Jake knew the situation was about to change. The tall elf moved with graceful authority, and his golden robes marked him as high-ranking in the Elven delegation. "Princess Lyrelay," Ambassador Goldleaf said in accented English. "Your mother, Queen Sylviana, has requested daily reports on your activities. I must inform her of these unusual interactions." Princess Lyrelay turned toward the ambassador's voice. "You may tell my mother that I have found a friend," she said calmly. "Something I thought was impossible." Ambassador Goldleaf looked at Jake with obvious distaste. "Your mother will not approve of this friendship, Princess. It would be wise to end it before she arrives." Jake felt a chill run through him. "Queen Sylviana is coming here?" he asked. "She will arrive tomorrow," Ambassador Goldleaf confirmed. "Princess Lyrelay, I strongly advise you to consider your position and your duties to your people. After the ambassador left, Princess Lyrelay was quiet for a long time. Jake could see that she was troubled by the news of her mother's arrival. "What will happen when your mother gets here?" Jake asked gently. Princess Lyrelay sighed deeply. "My mother believes that my blindness is a punishment from our gods. She thinks that associating with other species will make the curse worse. She will try to separate us." Jake felt determined not to let that happen. "What if we don't let her?" he said. Princess Lyrelei looked surprised. "You would stand against an elven queen for someone like me?" she asked. Jake thought about all the joy and wonder he had seen Princess Lyrelei experience over the past weeks. He thought about how her laughter had brightened his own days and how much her friendship meant to him. "Yes," Jake said simply. "I would." Queen Sylviana Starweaver arrived at Haven's Rest with great ceremony. Her ship was 3 times larger than any other vessel docked at the station, and it gleamed like polished silver in the starlight. Jake watched from the engineering bay as the Elven Royal Guard formed precise lines along the docking corridor. The queen herself was tall and regal with the same silver hair as her daughter, but her eyes were sharp and golden instead of blind white. She wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid starlight and a crown that sparkled with crystals Jake had never seen before. Every movement she made was graceful and commanding. Jake knew that Queen Sylviana's arrival meant trouble for his friendship with Princess Lyrelei. He had spent the morning thinking about what Ambassador Goldleaf had said and wondering if there was any way to protect the princess from being taken away. When Jake's lunch break arrived, he made his way to the observation deck as usual. Princess Lyrelei was not in her normal chair. Instead, she stood near the windows with her back straight and her hands clasped behind her. Jake could tell she was nervous. "Hello, Princess," Jake said softly as he approached. Princess Lyrelei turned toward his voice. "Jake," she said with relief. "I was afraid you might not come today." "I promised I would be here," Jake replied. "How are you feeling about your mother's arrival?" Before Princess Lyrelei could answer, Queen Sylviana entered the observation deck, followed by Ambassador Goldleaf and 2 royal guards. The queen's presence seemed to fill the entire room with authority and power. "Lyrelei," Queen Sylviana said in a voice like music and ice, "come away from the windows, child." Princess Lyrelei straightened her shoulders but did not move. "I am comfortable where I am, Mother," she said. Queen Sylviana's golden eyes fixed on Jake. "You must be the human who has been disturbing my daughter's peace," she said coldly. Jake stood up and faced the elven queen. He felt small and rough compared to her elegant beauty, but he did not back down. "Your Majesty," he said politely, "I'm Jake Morrison. I've had the honor of becoming friends with Princess Lyrelei." "Friends." Queen Sylviana repeated the word as if it tasted bitter. "My daughter does not need friends, human. She needs protection from influences that could worsen her condition." Princess Lyrelei stepped forward. "Mother, I am not a child anymore. I am 247 years old and I can choose my own companions." Queen Sylviana's expression showed shock. Princess Lyrelei had never spoken back to her before. "You will return to our ship immediately," the queen commanded. "This human contamination ends now." "No," Princess Lyrelei said clearly. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Ambassador Goldleaf looked uncomfortable, and the royal guards shifted nervously. Jake realized he was witnessing something that had never happened before in elven royal history. Queen Sylviana's face showed a mixture of anger and hurt. "You would choose a friendship with this lesser being over loyalty to your own people?" she asked. Jake felt anger rise in his chest at being called a lesser being, but he controlled his temper. "Your Majesty, with respect, Princess Lyrelei is not choosing between friendship and loyalty. She's choosing between isolation and connection." "You dare lecture me on my own daughter?" Queen Sylviana's voice was dangerous now. "I dare to care about someone who deserves happiness," Jake replied firmly. At that moment, Captain Martinez and Ambassador Stone entered the observation deck. Jake was glad to see them because he knew the situation was getting out of control. "Your Majesty," Ambassador Stone said with a diplomatic bow, "perhaps we could discuss this situation in a more private setting." Queen Sylviana looked around the room and seemed to notice for the first time that other diplomats were watching the confrontation with great interest. "Very well," she said coldly, "but my daughter will return to our ship tonight." "Actually," Jake said before he could stop himself, "I have a different idea." Everyone in the room turned to look at him. Jake swallowed hard but continued speaking. What if Princess Liralai could experience the universe in a new way? What if her blindness didn't have to be a limitation? Queen Silviana laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Are you suggesting you can cure what our greatest healers could not fix human? Not cure, Jake said. Enhance. We have technology that could let Princess Liralai sense things she's never experienced before. Princess Liralai turned toward Jake with excitement. What kind of technology? She asked. Jake looked at Captain Martinez and Ambassador Stone, hoping they would support his idea. We have neural interface systems that can translate visual data into other sensory input. Touch, heat, sound, vibration. Princess Liralai could experience sight through her other senses. Queen Silviana's expression showed disgust. You want to contaminate my daughter with human machinery, she said. I want to give her choices, Jake replied. The choice to experience more of the universe around her. Ambassador Stone stepped forward. The technology exists, Your Majesty. It's experimental but safe. We use similar systems to help our own people who have sensory limitations. And it would be completely voluntary, Captain Martinez added. Princess Liralai would be free to try it or refuse it as she chooses. Princess Liralai moved closer to Jake. I want to try it, she said quietly. Absolutely not, Queen Silviana declared. I forbid it. Princess Liralai raised her chin defiantly. Then I refuse to return to the ship, she said. I will request political asylum with the human delegation. The silence that followed was complete. Ambassador Goldleaf looked like he might faint. The royal guards seemed frozen in place. Queen Silviana stared at her daughter with an expression of complete shock. You would abandon your people for human trinkets, Queen Silviana whispered. I would choose my own path for the first time in my life, Princess Liralai replied. Jake has shown me that I am not cursed, Mother. I am just different, and different can be beautiful. Jake felt amazed by Princess Liralai's courage. She was standing up to the most powerful person in her entire civilization for the chance to experience something new. Ambassador Stone saw an opportunity. Your Majesty, perhaps we could arrange a demonstration. If Princess Liralai tries the technology and finds it harmful or unpleasant, she could stop immediately. But if it helps her, then maybe our two peoples could work together to develop it further. Queen Silviana looked at her daughter for a long moment. Princess Liralai stood straight and proud, no longer the timid, isolated figure she had been when Jake first met her. One demonstration, Queen Silviana said finally. But if this human technology causes any harm to my daughter, I will hold your entire species responsible. Jake felt relief and terror at the same time. He had just committed to proving that human technology could help an elven princess experience sight for the first time in her life. If it failed, the consequences could be terrible for human-elven relations. But when Jake looked at Princess Liralai's hopeful expression, he knew he had made the right choice. She deserved the chance to see the stars she had been listening to him describe for so many days. Thank you, Mother, Princess Liralai said softly. Queen Silviana's expression softened slightly. Do not thank me yet, child. I pray to our ancestors that I am not making a terrible mistake. Jake hoped the same thing. Tomorrow would determine whether his friendship with Princess Liralai could change the relationship between their two species or destroy it completely. Dr. Amy Chen had worked through the entire night preparing the experimental neural interface device. Jake found her in the medical bay the next morning, surrounded by complex equipment and computer displays. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but she looked excited about the challenge. Jake, this is either going to be amazing or a complete disaster, Dr. Chen said as she made final adjustments to the device. I've modified our standard sensory translation system specifically for elven neural patterns. The interface should convert visual data into tactile and auditory sensations. Jake looked at the device, which resembled a delicate silver headband with tiny sensors along its length. How does it work exactly? He asked. Dr. Chen picked up the device carefully. The sensors read electrical activity from the visual cortex of the brain. Then the computer translates that information into patterns that can be felt as temperature, texture, and vibration, while simultaneously creating audio tones that represent different colors and brightness levels. That sounds incredibly complex, Jake said with worry. It is, Dr. Chen admitted. But Princess Lyralee's brain is remarkably adaptable according to our scans. Elven neural pathways are actually more flexible than human ones. If this works for anyone, it should work for her. Jake felt nervous about the demonstration. So much depended on whether the technology would help Princess Lyralee experience sight in a meaningful way. Queen Sylviana had made it clear that any failure would damage relations between humans and elves permanently. Ambassador Stone arrived at the medical bay, followed by Captain Martinez. Behind them came the elven delegation, including Queen Sylviana, Princess Lyralee, and Ambassador Goldleaf. 2 elven healers accompanied them, looking suspicious of the human medical equipment. Princess Lyralee seemed calm, but Jake could see tension in the way she held her shoulders. Queen Sylviana's expression was cold and watchful. The elven healers whispered among themselves in their musical language. Dr. Chen, Ambassador Stone said formally, "Please explain the procedure to Her Majesty." Dr. Chen bowed respectfully to Queen Sylviana. "Your Majesty, the device is completely non-invasive. It reads natural brain activity without affecting it in any way. Princess Lyralee will feel the headband resting lightly on her forehead, but nothing more." One of the elven healers stepped forward. "What guarantee do we have that this human device will not damage the princess's mind?" she asked. Dr. Chen gestured to a display screen showing brain activity patterns. "We have tested the device extensively on human volunteers with similar neural configurations. There have been no negative effects and the benefits have been significant." Queen Sylviana studied the medical equipment with obvious distrust. "How do we know that what Princess Lyralee experiences will be meaningful and not simply random sensations?" she asked. Jake spoke up. "Your Majesty, I'd like to be the first test subject. I can wear the device and describe what I experience while looking at something Princess Lyralee has never seen. Then when she tries it, she can tell us if her experience matches mine." Princess Lyralee turned toward Jake's voice. "You would test unknown technology on yourself for me?" she asked. "Of course," Jake said simply. Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. "That's actually an excellent idea. Jake, you can look at this star chart while wearing the device and describe the tactile and audio sensations. Then Princess Lyralee can experience the same chart and we can compare your descriptions." Jake sat down and Dr. Chen placed the neural interface headband on his forehead. The device was lighter than he expected and felt cool against his skin. Dr. Chen activated the system and suddenly Jake's world changed completely. He was looking at a chart showing the local star system, but now he could feel it as well as see it. The bright central star created a warm, tingling sensation on his left hand, while smaller stars felt like gentle touches on his fingers. Different colored stars produced different musical tones that seemed to paint the visual information in sound. "This is incredible," Jake said with amazement. "The yellow star feels warm and sounds like a deep bell. The blue star feels cool and sharp and sounds like a high flute note. The red stars feel soft and warm and sound like drums." Princess Lyralee listened intently to Jake's description. Queen Sylviana watched her daughter's face carefully, noting the expression of hope and excitement there. Dr. Chen removed the device from Jake and turned to Princess Lyralee. "Are you ready to try, Princess?" she asked gently. Princess Lyralee nodded and moved to the chair Jake had vacated. Dr. Chen placed the neural interface on her forehead with extreme care. The elven healers moved closer to monitor their princess. For any signs of distress, Dr. Chen activated the device and Princess Lyralee gasped. Her blind white eyes widened and her hands gripped the arms of the chair. For a moment, Jake worried that something had gone wrong. Then Princess Lyralee began to cry. But these were not tears of pain or fear. Her face showed wonder and joy beyond anything Jake had ever seen. She lifted her hands in front of her face and turned them slowly as if seeing them for the first time. "I can feel my hands," she whispered. "They are warm, and they sing a soft melody. The melody changes when I move my fingers." Dr. Chen smiled with relief and adjusted the device settings. "Now look toward the star chart, Princess," she said. Princess Lyralee turned her head toward the display, and her expression changed to one of pure amazement. "The stars," she breathed. "Jake, they feel exactly as you described. The yellow star is warm like sunshine on my skin. The blue star is sharp and cool like ice. But there is so much more. Princess Lyrelei stood up slowly, still wearing the device. She moved toward the observation window and looked out at the real stars visible beyond the station, her hands pressed against the glass as she experienced space for the first time with something resembling sight. "The nebula," she said with reverence. "It feels like silk and velvet mixed together. It sings with colors I never knew existed." "Jake, how did you ever find words to describe such beauty when words are so small compared to this experience?" Jake felt tears in his own eyes as he watched Princess Lyrelei discover the visual universe. Queen Silviana moved to stand beside her daughter. The Elven Queen's expression had changed from suspicion to wonder. "What do you see when you look at me, child?" Queen Silviana asked softly. Princess Lyrelei turned toward her mother. "You glow with golden light, mother. Your presence feels like warmth and strength and music all together. You are more beautiful than I ever imagined." Queen Silviana reached out and touched her daughter's face gently. "And you, my dear one, are far more than I ever allowed myself to see." Other diplomats had begun gathering outside the medical bay as word spread that the experiment was successful. Representatives from the Crystalline Collective and the Aquatic Harmony requested demonstrations of the technology for members of their own species who had different sensory abilities. Ambassador Stone recognized the diplomatic significance of what was happening. "Your Majesty," she said to Queen Silviana, "this technology could benefit many people across multiple species. Perhaps our peoples could work together to develop it further." Queen Silviana looked at her daughter, who was now describing the different colors and textures she could perceive through the device. Princess Lyrelei's joy was infectious, and her wonder at finally experiencing visual beauty was obvious to everyone present. "Yes," Queen Silviana said finally. "I believe such cooperation would be beneficial." Princess Lyrelei turned back to Jake while still wearing the neural interface. "Jake Morrison," she said formally, "you have given me the greatest gift possible. You have shown me that limitations can become new forms of strength." Jake felt proud and happy, but also humble. "You gave me a gift too, Princess," he said. "You taught me that friendship can change everything." Dr. Chen began explaining to the elven healers how the technology worked and how it could be modified for different species. Ambassador Stone and Queen Silviana started discussing formal cooperation agreements, but Jake's attention remained focused on Princess Lyrelei as she continued exploring her new ability to experience the visual world. She was no longer the isolated and untouchable figure he had first met. She had become someone confident and joyful, who could see beauty in ways that others never could. The demonstration had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, and Jake knew that this was only the beginning of something much larger. News of Princess Lyrelei's successful use of the neural interface spread quickly throughout Haven's Rest. Within hours, representatives from 8 different species had requested meetings with the human delegation to learn more about adaptive technology. Jake found himself suddenly important in ways he had never expected, but not everyone was pleased with the developments. Ambassador Goldleaf and several members of the Elven High Council arrived at the station 3 days after the demonstration. They came with orders to bring Princess Lyrelei home immediately and to end what they called dangerous experimentation with inferior technology. Jake was working in the engineering section when Captain Martinez found him. "We have a problem," she said grimly. "The Elven extremists are demanding that Princess Lyrelei return their ship. They claim Queen Silviana has been influenced by human manipulation." Jake felt worried. Over the past 3 days, he had watched Princess Lyrelei bloom with confidence and joy as she learned to use the neural interface device. She had composed her first original poem in over a century, describing the experience of seeing a nebula through touch and sound. The poem had been translated into 12 languages and was being shared across multiple species. "What does Queen Silviana say?" Jake asked. "That's the problem," Captain Martinez replied. "She's torn between supporting her daughter and maintaining unity with her own people. The High Council is threatening civil war if she doesn't bring Princess Lyrelei home immediately. Jake realized that his friendship with Princess Lyrelei had created consequences far beyond what he had imagined. What can we do? He asked. Before Captain Martinez could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed, and automated voices announced a security alert in the diplomatic quarters. Jake and Captain Martinez rushed toward the source of the disturbance. They found a crowd gathered outside the Elven delegation's quarters. Through the transparent walls, Jake could see Elven guards surrounding Princess Lyrelei, while Ambassador Goldleaf argued with Queen Sylviana. Ambassador Stone was trying to mediate the situation, but the Elven guards were clearly preparing to take Princess Lyrelei by force. Jake pushed through the crowd and activated the door controls using his engineering access codes. "You have no authority here, human," Ambassador Goldleaf declared as Jake entered the room. "Maybe not," Jake said, "but Princess Lyrelei has the right to make her own choices." Princess Lyrelei stood in the center of the room wearing her neural interface device. Her face showed determination instead of the fear Jake might have expected. "Jake," she said as she turned toward his voice, "I'm glad you're here." Ambassador Goldleaf gestured to his guards. "Remove this human from our presence," he ordered. But before the guards could move, Princess Lyrelei stepped forward. "If you touch Jake Morrison, you will answer to me," she said in a voice that carried unmistakable royal authority. The guards hesitated. They had never heard Princess Lyrelei speak with such command before. Queen Sylviana looked at her daughter with surprise and what might have been pride. "Lyrelei, you cannot defy the High Council," she said gently. "I can and I will, Mother Princess," Lyrelei replied. "For 200 years I have been told that my blindness makes me less than others. Jake and his people have shown me that different does not mean inferior. I will not return to being treated as a burden or a shame." "Ambassador." Goldleaf's face showed anger and frustration. "Princess, you speak of things you do not understand. This human technology is corrupting your mind. Can you not see that their friendship is just another form of manipulation?" Princess Lyrelei moved closer to Jake. "I can see many things now, Ambassador. I can see that Jake has never asked for anything from me except the chance to be my friend. I can see that human technology has given me abilities my own people could not. And I can see that fear makes people choose cruelty over kindness." The argument was interrupted when Princess Lyrelei suddenly requested permission to address the entire diplomatic assembly. Ambassador Stone quickly agreed, seeing an opportunity to resolve the crisis through Princess Lyrelei's own words. Within an hour, the main assembly hall was filled with representatives from all 12 species attending the peace negotiations. Princess Lyrelei stood at the center podium wearing her neural interface device and looking out at the crowd with newfound confidence. "Honored delegates," she began, "I speak to you today not as a princess or as a representative of my people, but as someone who has learned what it means to be truly seen." Princess Lyrelei described her life of isolation and the way her blindness had been treated as a curse by her own people. She talked about meeting Jake and how his simple kindness had changed everything for her. "Jake Morrison did not try to fix me or cure me," she said. "He saw me as complete exactly as I am. Then he and his people gave me tools to experience the universe in new ways. They showed me that limitations can become strengths and differences can become gifts." The assembly listened in complete silence as Princess Lyrelei continued. "I have heard the stars sing in colors I never knew existed. I have felt the texture of moonlight and the warmth of distant suns. Human technology did not make me normal. It made me more than I ever thought possible." Princess Lyrelei turned toward the Elven delegation. "My people fear that associating with other species will diminish us, but I have learned that isolation diminishes us far more than connection ever could. We cannot grow if we refuse to learn from others." Ambassador Goldleaf stood up from his seat. "Princess, you speak of individual experience, but what of duty to your people and traditions?" he asked. "I propose a new tradition," Princess Lyrelei replied. "I propose that we measure our worth not by our limitations but by how we help others overcome theirs. I propose that we judge other species not by how different they are from us, but by how much we can learn from them." The crowd began murmuring, as delegates from different species discussed Princess Lyrelai's words among themselves. Jake noticed that even some of the elven representatives seemed moved by her speech. Princess Lyrelai raised her voice to address the entire assembly. I call for the creation of interspecies cooperation in developing adaptive technologies. Let my experience be the beginning of something that helps people from all our worlds live fuller lives. Queen Sylviana stood up slowly. Jake held his breath, waiting to see if she would support her daughter or order her to stop speaking. My daughter speaks wisdom, Queen Sylviana announced. The Etherian elves will participate in this cooperative effort. We will learn from other species and share our own knowledge in return. The assembly erupted in discussion as delegates realized they were witnessing a historic moment. Ambassador Stone quickly called for a formal vote on what became known as the Lyrelai Accords, establishing the first interspecies agreement focused on adaptive assistance and inclusive technology. The vote was unanimous. After the assembly, Jake found Princess Lyrelai in the observation deck where they had first met. She was looking out at the stars through her neural interface, and her face showed peaceful contentment. So what happens now? Jake asked as he sat beside her. Princess Lyrelai smiled. Now I go home to help establish the new cooperative programs. But first, Mother has invited you to visit our homeworld as a cultural exchange engineer. Jake felt excitement and nervousness at the prospect of visiting an alien world. What will I do there? He asked. You will help us understand how to build bridges between different peoples, Princess Lyrelai said. You will teach us that friendship has no boundaries. Jake looked out at the stars that Princess Lyrelai was experiencing through touch and sound. I think I'd like that, he said. Princess Lyrelai reached over and took Jake's hand. Thank you, Jake Morrison, she said softly. You gave me the gift of sight, but more importantly, you gave me the gift of being seen. Jake squeezed her hand gently. Thank you for teaching me that seeing clearly isn't always about vision, he replied. As their ship prepared to depart Haven's Rest, Jake reflected on how much had changed since he first noticed a lonely figure sitting by herself in the observation deck. A simple act of kindness had led to technological breakthroughs, diplomatic agreements, and new friendships across species barriers. Princess Lyrelai stood beside him as they watched the stars grow brighter ahead of them. She was no longer isolated or untouchable. She had become a bridge between worlds and a symbol of what was possible when people chose understanding over fear. The neural interface device had given Princess Lyrelai a new way to see the universe, but Jake realized that the most important gift had been much simpler. It was the recognition that everyone deserves to be valued for who they are, rather than limited by what they cannot do. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, Jake knew that this was just the beginning of a much larger story. The Lyrelai Accords would lead to new technologies, new partnerships, and new possibilities for countless people across the galaxy. But it had all started with one human engineer who decided to sit down next to someone who looked lonely and tell her about the beauty of the stars.